Some people are better off led. Better for them, better for you, better for everyone involved. Not everyone, obviously. And it's not a case of controlling people against their will, but some people are just better off led. They're better off being led. But obviously it depends what kind of a leader you are and where you want to lead them, doesn't it? What's the intention of the leader? Often it's not beneficial for the other person. Often it's selfish, but not always. Enlightened leadership is always best. And enlightening leadership. Where are we headed as a collective? That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Where are we headed? Where are we being led? Ideally, yes. That's enlightened leadership. That's the aim. But enlightened leadership it requires a very specific kind of strategy. And given the nature of the ego, enlightened leadership needs to be aware that the ego is constantly diverting away from enlightenment. So how do you lead someone towards enlightenment while their ego is leading them astray? Is a difficult question, and it's one that requires, like I say, a very specific kind of strategy. And actually, it's a strategy that's unlimited. Depending on the individual, there's no limits to what kind of strategy you can employ. Yeah, the end point, it's funny, because the end point is the starting point, funnily enough. But, the ego thinks it's on a journey. So very often you have to keep the ego in check and entertained within a sustained boundary of safety and cultivation, so that essentially you convince the ego to walk around in a circle so it doesn't go anywhere, but it's quite happy because it's entertained by the journey that it thinks it's on. Meanwhile, the energy of enlightenment is being cultivated, which burns through the ego eventually. But then the ego has problems with that along the way too. The energy of enlightenment consumes the ego, and if the ego is strong, it can struggle against letting go, but suffering is always the result of that. So, more often than not, it's forced to let go. Like standing up against a tidal wave, which is good, ultimately. It's good for the end result, but it can make the current circumstances challenging, to say the least. Egos are very twitchy. They don't like to sit still. So you give it exercise, It's like doing burpees or jumping jacks. You're not going anywhere, running on the spot. Entertain yourself, keep yourself occupied, keep yourself happy, keep your ego happy as best you can, while you cultivate its destruction, which is why the masterful strategy of occult means hidden. The best way to kill that ego is in a way that it's unaware of, which is where a good guide or teacher or leader would employ those means.